Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aries, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of June 2025. I hope you are well. I'm using the Night Sun Tarot for you today. Here it is. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. You are looking for the link in the description box that takes you to Selfie. Alternatively, you could come join us over on Circle. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee. Hang out with some extraordinary people and come participate in the live classes that we run there twice a month. So if that sounds like it's up your street, any of that, it's all down in the description box below. Help yourself to that. Right, Aries. Let's have a look and see what's going on with you. Sorry about this, the sun's got to a certain point in the sky, so till I get a blind up at this window, there's not much I can do about it. Tell me what Aries needs to know, please. Current energy for Aries. Current energy for Aries. Whoa, okay, so we have the King of Swords in your recent past. What about current energy, please, for Aries? The Haben, the Empress, and what about what's coming towards Aries for June, please? What does Aries need to know? Oh, goodness, right. Well, we've got the Hermit reversed, and we also have the Ten of Swords reversed. I'm not sure I'm happy about categorizing those as reversals. They did sort of land a little bit like that, but I'm going to put them there anyway. Right, we have the Ace of Cups at the bottom of the deck. So wherever the Ace of Cups arrives, there is always an opportunity for us to improve our relationship with ourselves and thereby improve our relationship with, God, Source, Creator, the universe, however you want to call it for yourself. What's interesting, though, is that we've seen so much of the big shifts that have been happening for Aries happening internally. This is very much in accordance with what you would expect. With so much energy focused on the sign of Aries, not just right now with Saturn having newly entered your sign and Neptune, and they're sitting conjunct at the moment, but others too. Mercury came through Pisces, entered Aries, retrograded back out again. Mercury and Venus both did that. Yeah, we call it the 0 point, right? And it's insanely creative. But I think the way that it's been working for everybody up until this point has been focused very much on the internal state. I do wonder if from this point on, though, right, after June, we might be seeing far more external representations of that. I say that because the Hermit is reversed. And we seem to be moving through, actually, decisions being made, something creative being cultivated, gestated, take your pick, leading to exposure of that thing. The Hermit is about the retreat inwards. When the Hermit shows up reversed, for me, he is about coming back out of the cave again. Let's get some clarifiers on the table. And see what we've got going on here. Tell me about the King of Swords for Aries, please. We have the Seven of Wands. That has been coming up so much for everyone. I'm glad to see it in your past, though. Four of Cups, Six of Pentacles. Let's move these along a little bit so we've got some space. Tell me about the Empress, please. Wow, okay. Four of Swords and Four of Pentacles reversed. Very interesting. Double Fools there. And what about the Hermit and the Ten of Swords, please? Thank you. Verhaben. Six of Wands. Und. I knew that fucking Wheel of Fortune was going. I mean, to be fair, right? With everything that's happening in your sign at the moment, it's not too much of a leap, but I could actually feel it before it came out. One more card, please, for that. That's fucking two. Holy shit, right. Anywho, you're not done with the decisions. You're not done with the options yet. So if you thought you had set yourself upon a particular route and there was going to be no deviation from that anywhere, then prepare to be pleasantly surprised, because, you know, we start the month with this, well, we start the reading, really, not the month. We start the reading with a sense of you being in a place where decision making was necessary, moving through to the you know, the creative aspect of it. But we end the reading also on a bit of a cliffhanger in terms of the Two of Wands, which is there are more decisions to make moving forwards. Now, I like the, you know, when we look at the cards you've got here, they're absolutely beautiful. It feels very positive. It doesn't feel like your legs getting chopped out underneath you and then you needing to make a decision that is not where you were planning to go. It feels like there's much more in the area of expansion with this one over here. Nevertheless, let me get something to fiddle with. I have it. And let's start over here in your recent past. So like I said, the King of Swords is about a decision-making process, right? So it can be the need to make a decision, or it can be reflective of the fact that you're kind of moving into a space whereby you are more able to make decisions than you have been before. It represents the sign of Aquarius, but I don't think that that's particularly relevant for you here at this point, because I'm looking at the Seven of Wands and the Four of Cups and the Six of Pentacles, and I do feel a little bit of a push-pull, particularly since you know, the card number that appears most frequently for you is 4, right? Whenever we're talking about 4, we're talking about foundational things. We've got the Four of Cups, we've got the Four of Swords, we've got the Four of Pentacles. One might even say the Death card actually is a 4 too, because it's number 13 in the tarot, and that reduces down to a 4. What could be more fundamental than a change of state from one thing into another, you know? Well, you know, what's more fundamental than death? It's the only real certainty there is at this point, right? But death in terms of transformation, right? We're talking about, we're talking more along the lines of, you know, the first law of thermodynamics being that energy is not created or destroyed, it simply changes form. It goes from one foundational thing, state, to another foundational state. So as I'm looking at the Seven of Wands and the Four of Cups and the Six of Pentacles, I actually feel like there's been quite the push-pull going on. There's a desire to try and start some sort of new foundation, but there is an awareness that there's a moving away from what has been, if not inherently safe, then certainly what's been underneath you for the longest time, right? So we're talking more about familiarity than anything else. The Seven of Wands represents Mars in Leo. And certainly at the time of recording, Mars is still in Leo, and I think we have two weeks, I think. This is around about the 17th of June, I think, just off the top of my head, that Mars finally leaves Leo and goes into Virgo, which is sort of spelling the end of quite a protracted I can't even think of the word that I'm looking for, right? Sort of travels of Mars. Because he went into Cancer and everybody was like, when he was in Cancer last year, right? But then he moved into Leo and everyone was like, yay. And then he retrograded back out of Leo and back into Cancer. And although he's been back in Leo for some time now, it feels like it's all part of the same story. We're kind of going backwards and forwards. Maybe he's experiencing things slightly differently now than we were a few months ago, but I think this shift of Mars into Virgo is probably going to be really, really welcome for a lot of people, even though it doesn't necessarily dovetail too well with, you know, cardinal fire, being as it is you know, mutable earth. Nevertheless, the reason that I'm bringing all of this up is it feels like a desire to fight at the same time as feeling like you've been kind of separated somewhat from something, right? So what do I mean by this? This Four of Cups here is depicted as somebody like looking out of the window. There's a real grass is greener on the other side kind of feel about this, right? There's all this energy cursing, well, maybe that was a bit of a Freudian slip, right? Coursing through you at the moment, but I don't feel like it's really had too much of any way in which you've been able to output it just yet, right? So there's huge amounts of energy running through you. You're looking out the window going, God, I wish I could just Aries stuff. And you've been being very patient, Aries. I do have to give you that. And the biggest decision really that you've had to make is how to balance all of that within you, maintaining the patience and knowing that it's all coming and that the story is not yet written. Lots and lots of things are changing outside of you, and it's as much a case of timing as anything else. So, trusting the process and whatnot. But this push-pull, I don't even know if that's necessarily the right way to describe it, or whether it feels like an elastic band that's getting thinner and thinner and thinner the more you are trying to hold your patience and hold your temper and hold your creativity in to yourself. It feels like it's a rubber band that's getting ready to snap. Let me just pull up this Waitsmith here. Six of Pentacles is it's a really nice minor arcana card of balancing one's emotions. I know it's Pentacles, and so we're talking about possibly things of a material nature, but certainly in terms of where you invest the energy. But it also represents Moon in Taurus, so from that we've got that kind of grounded, safe, predictable emotional range where nothing too dramatic's happening on the one side of the things, whilst you also have this monumental amount of energy that is running through you at the same time, and it's this backwards and forwards between it. Maybe it's more like an oscillation than anything else, right? King of Wands in reverse, so there's very little that you are actually able to do at the moment. King of Wands would be in charge of all the big movements that we'd like to make going forward, and instead it's like you've actually had to sit and wait to be charged up with all of this energy, and the learning aspect of this is how to hold all of that energy without trying to immediately discharge it, which I think is very, very interesting. I think Aries is it's a very on-off kind of sign, a little bit like we talk about the energy of Uranus, right? It's either interested or it's not, or it's very, very interested immediately, and then it's like, oh, actually this is not cool. This is nowhere near as exciting and adventurous as I thought it was going to be, and so it's off again. I've friends with Aries moons, and I've never seen anyone flare up as quickly as an Aries moon, but equally just flare down again. I don't know what the opposite of flare up would be. I guess calm down as quickly, whereas old Leo moon over here takes a little bit to get the tank filled up and moving, but once I lose my temper about something, like fuck, it just keeps fucking erupting, sometimes even years later. Anywho, that represents it's High Priestess, right? It's about holding. It's about being a vessel for this. It's about allowing it to come into you, but also, not necessarily having to just discharge it straight away, right? Finding the balance here. And I do think, Aries, I'll be honest with you, although, Aries is given to be one of the most powerful signs because you do literally create something from nothing, right? That's the whole point of the first sign of the zodiac, right? I do feel like your creative endeavours, your stamina, your everything, it is going to be taken up to the next level in the not too distant future. And in order for you to operate at that level, it's like you have to hold a lot more energy than you are actually even accustomed to holding, because usually it's like it's in and it's out. It's in, because Aries likes to creatively express outside of themselves. But here we have like quite literally no action. King of Wands reversed and the High Priestess. She's not an active card. She doesn't represent an active energy. She does represent an energy of holding something, right? So this is very much in keeping what I was already thinking. And why? Well, because we have the Empress. Now, yes, it represents the sign of Taurus. It also represents the sign of Libra. Again, not particularly important, I think, for you at this point, because it is more about the holding and then the gestation that is coming off here, which makes me feel like there's a lot of stuff going on in the background with you. I think that you are involved in it as well. I don't think it's one of these cases where you're sort of waiting for, the big cogs of the universe to very slowly creak into place before, loads of energy is released for you. I feel like these are creative endeavours that you are involved with. And if anything, there is an exhortation not to blow your load too quickly on this one, Aries. It's like, allow things to develop, allow them to ferment, allow them to do whatever it is that they need to do, because the end result of this is going to be so much bigger than you're used to, which means it takes an equivalent amount of energy going in. Remember, we were talking about energy just changing form. It's not created, it's not destroyed. It's changing form. If what you're outputting is going to be bigger than anything that you've done before, it makes sense that there would be more input into it than you have done before. Now, both of these are foundational level cards. We've got the Four of Swords and we've got the Four of Pentacles here. Four of Pentacles, though, is showing up in reverse, which is really interesting because there is a sense of you kind of slowly but surely extricating yourself from a particular kind of foundation that you have held into something else, right? Obviously, we're looking for the creation of a new foundation, but I don't think that you're quite there yet. Like I said, well, we're all in this transitional phase, you more than most, where we're shifting from an old paradigm into a new paradigm. When the new paradigm will be so fully established that we can look at it and go, yeah, we made it, I don't know. But in all reality, I think we're probably looking for the late 2020s, 2028, 2029, possibly even 2030, before we can say that. I think that's massively optimistic, personally. And I think this started back in 2020. So, 15 to 20 years, a generation, possibly. Which means this slightly chaotic transitional phase is going to be ongoing a lot longer than we've probably budgeted for, which makes sense then as to why you would need so much more energy for it. Anyway, the Four of Swords for me is a card of mental peace. It follows on very beautifully from what we've got over here, because it's like, it's not been a struggle as much as it could have been for you to hold this much energy. I think in the past it would have been too much and you would have blown your load, and there just would have been energy everywhere, but here we're kind of funneling it into something that is really, really important. It's a skill that's been built up over a period of time for you, Aries, and very much attributable, I think, to the difficulties that you've been through of late. It's like, well, I say of late, I was saying the last 2 years or so, because if something's worth doing, it is worth doing well, and it's not just you. I get a real sense of signs being acutely aware that it is not just you, right? So it's not just some sort of creative project that you want to design and get out there. It's as much about understanding that we're all standing on the edge of a whole new world. And we want our contribution to be a meaningful one that is actually helping everybody else as much as it's helping us, right? So I feel like this Four of Swords is an excellent place for you mentally, even though it has been challenging at times. I think you're really into the flow of it now. And every day that goes past where you are in this kind of flow state, where you're allowing things to develop internally and externally, is a day further away from an old kind of value system that you used to hold. Now, because perception shapes reality, right? Belief shapes reality too. The pair of them together, absolutely. Six of Cups, yeah. We're, oh, look at that. Nine of Swords at the bottom of the deck. It feels like you are consciously reprogramming your mind. When we talk about shadow work, we talk about voluntary and involuntary shadow work. And more often than not, what starts people down the road of this sort of thing is involuntary shadow work, right? So it's the big breakup, it's the death of a loved one, it's, you know, some sort of relatively traumatic event that kind of flings us into a long dark night of the soul where we have to reassess everything, right, in the light of the new information that has, you know, arisen. Very Three of Swordsy. But thereafter, if we do the work properly, we begin to see the value in choosing to go there and look at those things, not waiting to be, you know, kicked by the universe or by fate or whatever into those spaces. We actually go looking for them because we become committed to the art of making ourselves a better version than we were yesterday, right? I think you had a quite protracted period of involuntary shadow work. And whilst I don't think that you are necessarily there now, I think that all of the work that you have done up until this point has brought you to a place where you are able to extricate yourself from an old way of thinking, an old way of doing things. And I literally said, perception creates reality. This for me here is a card of perception. Now, in the past, you could, you know, look back, and hopefully you'll do this with love and compassion. You can look back at your previous self and your previous choices and maybe just cringe a little bit, be like, oh my God. I hope you don't cringe, but you know what I mean, right? You recognize that now you would make different decisions. I think if you can look back at any situation of your life and say, I would do things very differently now, then you've ticked the box on having grown somewhere, right? But it's so much bigger with you, Aries. Because where you have attacked your own perception, you've maybe even attacked your own belief structures, right? And this is huge for causing growth. Is when you take one of your beliefs and you challenge it, and you're like, this is bullshit. I don't even know why I believed it, right? And you allow yourself to put those down. The neuron, the synapses that start firing in that sort of situation are insane. So it changes your reality. You don't see things the way that you did before. You know, what was problematic in the past, see that between these two cards here, it's not affecting you in the same way because you're kind of breaking free. I'm thinking about a huge cruise ship that's just kind of pinging off its ropes that are holding it onto the pier or onto the jetty or whatever they call it when it's big. No, pier, jetty, I don't know. I don't really like water or big ships. So, but I would imagine there are probably more than two ropes that are holding something that size onto the land, right? As each one of those pings off, there's a little bit more of you that is loosening up and being free. And all of this is happening at the same time as you are getting used to this sense of holding more and more and more without the immediate discharge. It's like, no, gonna let this power up, power up, power up. It's novel for you, but it represents a level of mastery that I don't think you've been able to achieve up until this point. Now, we've got to be careful with these words because you might be looking at it and you go, well, without any output, how can I truly say that I'm a master at anything? I mean, the mastery is very much internal at this point. But there will come a point where what has been directed within is going to be, it's going to be the right time for it to be expressed without, right? Which is to say your normal state of stuff from the inside going out. And I do think it's starting to show its face in June. Now, June's a kind of sticky month in a few ways. We've got a couple of transits that are a little bit awkward. But I think with a lot of these sorts of things, and I particularly feel like that now because it's 2025, and we've accepted that things are breaking down. We're accepting, an amount of chaos. We're also accepting that there will be a need to rebuild at some point in the future, right? So these transits that may have been a little bit crunchy in the past because they threatened what was stable and secure, to me they don't look quite as threatening as they might have done in the past now. It's just a natural part of the process of entropy that has been underway for quite a while. So I would say some of those rather crunchier transits that are happening this month, and I'm thinking there's a Mars-Uranus, or is it a square? I think it might be a square. Forgive me, I'm just trying to go straight off the top of my head. I think it's a square. Which can cause issues. You've got the unpredictability of Uranus, and then, the fire of Mars, the violence of Mars, potentially. But I actually feel like there's space for you to explore here, Aries. Saturn has just entered your sign. Neptune has just entered your sign. Jupiter will be moving into Cancer next month, so let's not worry about that too much right now. But I feel like, I've got a sense that for you, what is difficult in the sky is actually going to be more of the ropes that have been mooring your ship in the port being undone, allowing you to move more fully in the direction that you want to go. So right, we have this Hermit card here. What has been focused inwardly is now getting an opportunity to come out. And we have the Ten of Swords in reverse. Now, this is quite interesting because when we have a 10 in the upright, right, what we have is some sort of completion of a cycle. It says that this cycle isn't completed. And generally speaking, people don't enjoy the Ten of Swords, right? But it says that there's work going on in your brain, in your logic, in your reason, in your perception of reality, because swords have that kind of quality to me of your perceptions and whatnot. We've got the Nine of Swords up here, and here we would be like, well, I've been run through by 10 swords, but I'm still upright, chin's up, everything's good. And we're now done with that. Now, what this is saying is, like, you're not done with that. And that's not a bad thing. It's like there's more work to do in terms of accelerating you towards the end of thinking about things in a particular way. But it seems to be coming by way of things that feel really fucking good. And I wonder if part of the challenge for you, Aries, is the fact that things feel good. You might be somewhat ambushed by a feeling that things are going just a little bit too well. And I say this because, 2022, was it 22? I think so, into 2023, partially just a little bit into 2024 was quite a spicy period of time for Aries, right? There was a lot of shit going down, a lot of towers falling, and subsequently an awful lot of rebuilding that's had to go on. Now, Aries became, Aries, a strong sign, became considerably stronger during that time. And you've worked for everything that you've managed to rebuild since then. And it's come from a really healthy place. That's the other thing to notice, right? The other thing to note. But the universe seems to be prodding you from an entirely different fucking position here now and saying, are you prepared for things to be really, really good? Now, most of us, when asked that question, would say, well, yes, of course, we would love for things to be really, really good. But in reality, in fact, quite often, we will be thrown into a state of panic when things start to be good after a, fairly protracted period of things being bad. Bad, right? Yeah. The Six of Wands is a card of victory, right? It's Jupiter in Leo. It's not just feeling like you're winning at life, but it's like everybody else seeing that you're winning at life as well. It's like it's all the good things coming in, like the eternal summer. I think that's what Leo is about, right? The eternal summer, where it's a little less like that. Now I live closer to the equator than I used to, but certainly in the summer in the UK, living right up north, it wouldn't get dark until like 11:15 at night in peak summer. And it would be light again at 4 o'clock in the morning. You had this huge day, long day, where the sun was just shining. Back when the UK used to be able to see the sun. Doesn't really happen so much anymore. Anyway. It's like the longest playtime of your life, Leo season. I think that's what it's supposed to be, right? And then we have Jupiter, expanding what is already wonderful and the sort of thing that you will, look back with fondness on later on, making that feeling expand and expand and expand. And then we have the Wheel of Fortune, another card that represents Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's moving into Cancer, right? So it's whatever you've got in Aries, it's going to get squared by Jupiter initially, which is probably going to be a little less comfortable than we would like it to be, because Jupiter, good intents, but not always good results. Because this predisposition that Jupiter has to expanding things can also expand things that we don't want expanding by any stretch of the imagination at all. So we've got Jupiter. The phrase that I'm hearing is course correction, but it's a little bit more subtle than that, because there's something quite confrontational, hence the Death card and the Ace of Cups here. There's something quite confrontational about the idea of things being good for you, Aries, here on an emotional level. And I think what's being revealed by this, because you don't have to go within to look for it this month, it's coming right to the surface, is recognizing that there is a bit of suspicion, there is a bit of fear when things start to go well, that maybe this is very temporary, maybe this is an ambush, maybe this is some sort of setup and the universe is going to come through and, do what it does, what it has done to you at times. I would say that you're being put through this so that you can deal with your own issues on that front, because the Ten of Swords tells us that you have not quite come to the end of the cycle when it comes to the complete action of reprogramming your brain. It says there's a little bit more to do. This is why it's showing up reversed. But the Hermit reversed also says you're not having to look too far within you to find the answers. In fact, actually, if you just look around, and I would think this would be by way of opportunities and whatnot, like there's going to be enough stuff there that is triggering you immediately in your face that with even just a little bit of sensitivity, and you've got plenty of that now, Aries, and self-awareness and whatnot, you can see how the possibility of victory, success, things going your way, even kind of feeling like you're in the flow and there isn't really anything to fight, that would be an interesting aspect to play out here. Would be kind of triggering for you. Now, this Two of Wands here, I feel has a lot to do with the extent to which you're going to allow yourself to submit to, which is to say also trust that what's showing up here is for you, and not to undermine it by overthinking or, at worst, descending into sabotaging behaviours that are predicated on the notion that you either don't deserve this, or you're not worth this, or it's a trap. Because this is compassion and empathy and lots of things. I said it was about the relationship that you have with yourself right at the beginning, actually, which it absolutely is. But it is also representative of faith and trust. Those two things being the best weapons in your arsenal, actually. And then we have this death card here saying this is the change. This marks the shift of you into the entirely different version of you, right? Breaking free from your moorings of your previous existence, previous perception of reality, and moving into something that feels almost enchanted by how well it's going. Now, depending on how many fairy stories you've read when you were a kid, just the word enchanted may be a good thing, or it may be striking fear into your heart, because there's always a cost, right? But consider the possibility, Aries, that you have already paid up front for what is coming in. That it's not is not you being given good things, and the universe is going to come and cash your check later on, whether or not you've got the money to pay for it, metaphorically speaking. It's like you've been paying up front for this for a while, and this is actually the fruits of your labours beginning to pay off. And the question is, are you going to trust it, and are you going to allow it to happen? Therefore, bringing in the end of a very difficult way in which you have seen reality up until this point, right? We're marking a completion in that particular cycle, and the ability then to move on to the next stage. Or are you going to fall into default behaviours? Because the choice is yours. It's here with the Two of Wands, right? You pick one. And it's not like there are 15 different options here. It's asking you to be all in on the trust. But whether or not you feel capable of doing that, obviously, is going to be a matter purely for you. I think with everything that you've been through in the last few years, you've more than done the level of work required to start seeing this sort of benefit coming in, whether or not it's related to what you have been working on already. I mean, there's possibly some bigger overarching lesson here about learning to pace yourself and allowing yourself to fuel up to this new level that you've now developed each time you want to initiate something new, rather than going off like a little firecracker in 27 different directions and then getting bored and leaving. It's like the mature version of your energy is going to be more emperor-like than it is fool-like, whilst hopefully retaining some element of the full qualities about it, right? A kind of faith and trust. Not needing to have everything scripted out entirely, but quite happy to, take the fool's journey through your own personal development and through life. What's really interesting about this for me, actually, is if you look at your situation objectively, Aries, I mean, you actually sit down and think about what you've been through in the last 2 years, but probably more widely in the last 5 years, and where you are now versus where you were before. I think if you were to write it all down, you'd be astonished by how far you've come. You'd be astonished at what you've actually managed to go through. Because I don't think it's so far away that you've forgotten about it, but certainly the intensity has kind of left a little bit. And when you look at all of that, definitely the last 2 years, but more widely the last 5 years, I think what you're confronted with is this idea over and over again that actually there's nothing that's bested you yet. There might have been times where things felt like they were so awful. They might do. But in fact, you've got through all of it. And by and large, for the overwhelming majority of you, life is considerably better than it used to be. And the question is, what do you have to lose by putting your faith and trust in what has got you this far, which is you and the work that you have done? It's giving doubt, it's giving fear, it's giving perhaps an understandable kind of quiver of insecurity But I think you can talk yourself out of it, Aries. I really do. This is really interesting. Right, I'm going to go to the extended now. You're very welcome to join me over there if you would like to do so. As I said at the beginning, you can do that on Selfie or you can do that on Circle. I'd be delighted to see you in either place. If that's not for you, that's all absolutely fine as well. But I would just be checking yourself as good things start to come in. Make sure that you are not undermining them in any way. Don't put it down to luck. Don't put it down to right place, right time. Like, you've worked for these things, you've earned these things. Don't undermine the value of them by refusing to take credit for them and owning it, and then, continuing to walk in that perfect faith and perfect trust of the Fool that we're always talking about. All right. So I shall leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.